Hello, Kat. Thanks for having me on the show. It's really it's an honor to be on this thing that they do every month, and everyone who's organized it. I really appreciate it because I don't think people understand the severity with what we're dealing with. Right before I came on, I was thumbing through or scrolling through basically the Los Angeles Times website. They're a big paper. I live in LA, and nothing, not one anything mentioning about Julian Assange. Nothing.
Uh,
Not even against him, for him, nothing. There's just not even a mention of it. And it's astounding to me. And I see all of these journalists, in the corporate media here in America screaming about Russia, 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 and what a crime it is that Russia has done this, that they've hacked our election, and yet nothing about a journalist. You would think journalists would be screaming the loudest that they could get locked up the way he has. And nothing. There's no, there's nothing from them. I'm on the one sense, I'm bewildered by it, but on the other sense, I really understand it because they're all paid. The media is just a mouthpiece for those that are in power. The media used to be watchdogs of those that are in power, and now they're guard dogs for it. So they just know as long as I don't challenge the powerful, I'll keep my job, and I can talk about Russia and Stormy Daniels and whatever, the Kardashian, whatever ridiculous news thing that I'm covering that just keeps everybody distracted.
well, that's the
So
whole importance of alternative media, that at least now people have outlets where they can go and hear alternative news. People like Jimmy Dore,
mhm.
all different alternative, both right and left. Do you feel that those options are going to continue to be available to us? There's been a lot of censorship and just blacking out, and they're using algorithms now to basically put activist websites in ghettos, like free speech ghettos, when you're like a mile away from the actual demonstration. What do you think our chances are of they don't actually do outright censorship, but they use their algorithms and demonetization to, in essence, censor? Where do you think that's going for our voices to get
I
heard?
think I think you bring up a great point, and I think it's a little scary because I've seen it firsthand. I do a show called Political Vigilante where I just cover stories that the mainstream media won't cover, or I cover them from an angle that they won't cover them. And I've seen it firsthand. I've seen, if I mention Yemen, Afghanistan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, if I just put those words in the title of a video, it is demonetized automatically. My producer has told me she will be uploading videos, and there's times when there's not even a title yet. We haven't even put the title in, and they'll just demonetize it. They, I have stayed at 9,600 subscribers for a month. That is impossible. There's
Mhm.
I'm getting all these views. They're throttling views on videos, but they're unsubscribing people. I've had people tell me, I've subscribed to your channel, Graham, 5 and 6 times. I have to keep reminding people they're unsubscribing you. They are going after any type of independent voice. Anything that's progressive, they're doing it. I've seen it happen to Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kalinske. I mean, they've done it across the board to people who, and on the one hand, I have hope because so many people are fed up with the media. It doesn't matter if you watch Fox or MSNBC, it doesn't matter. It's all nonsense. And so more and more people are gravitating to independent media. And, I've seen Jimmy Dore, a good friend of mine, he got me into doing my YouTube show because it was 2 years ago, and he was like, "Oh, you got to do this," and he had 100 some subscribers, and now he's got 360,000 subscribers. So people are hungry for it. They want the truth, but really, I don't know, to answer your question, what the future will hold. What I'd like to see is more people waking up, more people realizing they're being lied to, and get out of this two-party paradigm. My party's good, but your party's bad. That both parties are ridiculous. And look at, you know, if you still think the mainstream media, whatever version you watch, is valuable, watch who buys ad time.
Very good point.
You know, it doesn't matter. It's Boeing, it's Raytheon, it's big pharmaceutical companies, it's the oil industry, you know. And so that's why certain stories are covered more. That's why certain stories are never covered. And that's all you need to know. And so I'm hoping more people are coming to things like this, because there should be CNN cameras outside of the Ecuadorian embassy. I mean, this should be like, journalists should be screaming at the top of their lungs, this is wrong. Rachel Maddow, where is she? Mm-hmm. Oh, right. She's too busy making $7 million a year talking about Russia. You know, where's Sean Hannity? Because any of them could get locked up like this. I mean, if they step out of line, you could get locked up. So I'm hoping that the censorship that we're all having to go through, they are censoring everybody on independent media, net neutrality, trying to get rid of that. Well, they've gotten rid of that. So we have to keep circumventing them, to answer your question.
Are you, you're probably aware, in case other people aren't, recently Ray McGuire reported that the second top lawyer at the New York Times was speaking before a private group, and it got reported in that industry's newspaper, that the lawyer was saying, oh my gosh, this Julian Assange stuff, they may come after us. It's like, duh. So they're aware, but do you think it made the light of day in the actual pages of the danger that even the New York Times is facing, and they're self-admitting it? And so all of this stuff is kept privatized, and the happy face distractions are what they present to the public.
Every journalist, every mainstream journalist, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, CNN, Fox, and NBC, all of them should be saying what that lawyer said. They could come after us, and they should be screaming it from the mountaintops, and no one wants to. I mean, it's the fact that these vigils, we're holding them online is on the one hand, it's very great that we're doing this and everybody involved, but it also is like, man, we have to go, like you say, to these little dark corners of the internet, you know, and scream, because we're not allowed to protest out there. And I'm hoping that more people just wake up and get involved. And I applaud this vigil and all of you organizers for it, because we don't, like last month I was talking to a woman who's probably fairly conservative, fairly right wing, and we both agreed on a lot of stuff, you know. And so that just shows you when it's a good idea.
Right.
Is when everyone goes, this isn't right.
Yes. And that's the beauty of what Unity for J has brought together under the vision of Susie Dawson, is to realize that it's not about a right or left approach to Julian, but a transpartisan approach, that find one issue and stay on message with that one issue where people can find solidarity. And that's just a stepping stone to us all coming together on issues. They keep wanting to have these internecine warfares that they instigate and even plant with informants and agitators. And really, we all have the same needs. We all want free education, free healthcare. There's the money out there for all this. None of us want war. We have the same issues. And we talk about these in the alternative media, but the mainstream media keeps trying to keep us separate. And people just need to get woke. And it's what I love about what you do, Graham, is, and Jimmy Dore and Randy Credico, is using comedy to get at basically emotions in another way. It's a beautiful path towards opening people up that is kind of, people aren't on guard, and just ready to laugh. And when laughter is there, the heart is open. So what I would really like to know from you is, in your shows, how do you find that rapport? When do you know you're going too far? And how do you feel when audiences get a really political message that you're saying, but you've ensconced it in laughter? What is that feeling for you?
Well, you make a great point. When somebody's laughing, they're more willing to go, oh, you know what, I hadn't thought of that, or I can kind of see your side of it. Even if I don't agree with you 100%, the fact that you got me laughing, I'm open to another idea. Versus if we're arguing, I'm just going to go no. So there's that, and we started doing, Ron Placone and I, who's a regular on the Jimmy Dore Show, we started doing the Progressive Comedy Tour, and one of the most profound things, we've done two of them. We did one in May and one in June. And in May, I remember we were doing a show in Tempe, Arizona, which is a suburb of Phoenix. Arizona is a very red state, and we had a decent sized crowd, and I'd say a lot of the people had seen us on Jimmy Dore Show or watched our, Political Vigilante or whatever, and they came out to see us. But there were some people who just was like, well, let's go to the comedy club. And I was doing this whole thing in my act about this joke about how ridiculous the lesser of two evils is. And what was some statistic, I think it was like 80% of the people that voted in the last presidential election, the combination of all the people that voted for Trump and Hillary, 80% of them said they voted for either one of those candidates as the lesser of two evils. And I was saying, where else would we let that happen in America? We always want the best. It's like, honey, it's date night. We have two sitters to choose from. One's a drug addict and one's a serial killer. I guess we'll go with the drug addict to watch our children.
Excellent.
And I remember, and then I launched into this thing after that joke of they're like, you're saying, they want us divided. They want us red state, blue state. They want us, black, white, male, female, whatever. They want us liberal, conservative fighting with each other. Because if we all got together, we're all going to go, oh, you guys are screwing us all over. And I saw this table full of Arizona-looking Republicans, well-off, white people, conservative. And they were like, yeah, next to the table of hippie-looking Bernie supporters. And I was like, there. They don't watch us on Jimmy Dore. They probably didn't even know who we were, but they just came to the show saying, Progressive Comedy Tour, I'm going to check this out. And they were on board. And I was like, that's something. That's something you can really touch on.
Uh-huh. Have you found any censorship in the actual clubs or concert venues, or they let you just do what you want?
No, there's been no censorship at all. The live venues, especially when you're marketing a show and a tour for a specific audience and those people are coming to see you, then the clubs are like, I don't care, say whatever you want to say. And I think that's why Ron and I decided to do that, because if I was just performing just at a comedy club, let's say I got hired to do a week of shows at a regular comedy club, and I'm just billed as Graham Elwood comedian, and I'll draw some of my fans, but then there's some people who are just going to show up. And in that sometimes that's difficult, because I've heard some LA comics talk, they go out on the road and their whole act is just making fun of Trump, and people in the audience get mad. And I'm like, well, that's the only, and some of the audience people get mad, and maybe the club owner might go, well, my crowd is a little conservative. I've only heard of stuff like that. But again, I actually view that as the fault of the comedian being just a neoliberal. I don't like Trump at all, but what brought him here? Our whole system is broken. So we need to talk about that. And when you start saying the whole system is broken, everybody can hear you. Everyone will listen. When you say it's that party's fault or that party's fault, then people go, they start to shut you out. And when you look at both, I don't like what Trump is doing, but Obama is the one that made this Julian Assange thing happen. You know, Julian Assange 2010 called out Obama's war machine. So it's like you start to see that there's not big of, you know, who was it? I think it was Noam Chomsky said the difference between the two parties was the speed with which they dropped to their knees for corporate benefactors.
Right.
So, but as a comedian, so go. Let me wrap this up. We're not getting a lot of censorship in the clubs because if the audience likes it, and if you can connect to an audience that's a broad range of people and ethnicities and socioeconomic backgrounds or whatever, and you can connect with them, that's where comedy is a lightning rod. The venues don't care. It's on the internet where we're seeing all the censorship.
Right. So far. Well, I have seen you had Graham Elwood live from Afghanistan, and I'm just wondering, were you actually there? And then what is the possibility if this does ratchet up and he ends up coming to the U.S., what's the possibility of concert for Julian and comedians and musicians get together, like concert for Bangladesh kind of thing, or live from Afghanistan? So tell us about this live from Afghanistan, because you have experience then, I guess, doing political comedy as a political platform, and what you think about the possibility of people coming together, artists, for an actual Julian Assange concert.
Sure. First of all, yes, I've gone to Afghanistan 3 times and Iraq 3 times and Kuwait 4 times to do comedy for the military. And I went to Afghanistan for the first time in 2004, and I brought a little camcorder and just recorded all my shows, and I interviewed people, and I made 2 things. I made a concert video, just like a stand-up called Live from Afghanistan, and it's about a 50 minute where I took clips from all these different shows, and it's available on Netflix. And then I made a separate documentary called Laughghanistan, which is available on Amazon Prime. And that was a documentary showing what it's like being a comedian in a war zone. And those were life-changing experiences, seeing war up close. And it's why I'm so anti-war now, more than ever, because of the 22 vets a day that commit suicide for these wars. And I saw these, and I saw the recession hit in 2008, and a lot of soldiers going, I had to re-enlist. They gave me a $20,000 re-enlistment bonus. There's no jobs back in my town. The factory's closed, whatever. There's nothing. So I saw that, what war was like, and saw wounded soldiers, and went to, have done some work with Wounded Warriors and the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. So it's a very personal thing for me. And I've done fundraiser shows and stuff like that for them. So to segue that into your next question, I think it's a fantastic idea for performers or comedians. I mean, Lee Camp, Jimmy Dore, myself, to do a comedy show, and maybe even bring musicians in there as well, that is a fundraiser to bring awareness and fundraising for Julian's legal battle if they try to drag him here. I think it's something we absolutely should do. I think I feel like I have an obligation as a performer to use my voice and abilities to speak to large groups of people to get a message across, and if I can help raise money to do it, all the better.
Right. That could be really exciting. I can't help but think that Roger Waters would participate. He's been very out there, and he even had a big screen of Julian Assange and what's going on. So it's just amazing how celebrities can and will get on the bandwagon, and yet really so few have for Julian Assange. Are they just in the dark, or is that a political line they're afraid to cross? Many will not speak out about support of Palestine because there's so much backlash. Is Julian Assange really? There are a lot of people who are opposed to the establishment duopoly, a lot of celebrities, and yet they have not come out for Julian Assange, and maybe we just haven't reached out to them enough. You're in the entertainment business. Do you think it's a question of we haven't proactively reached out to them enough, or that they've made that a line that they're afraid to cross because it looks too controversial for their careers?
I think it's a combination of they're not informed, because I look at my own sort of awakening, graph or trajectory, and I think many of them in entertainment are primarily neoliberals, or so they're watching MSNBC and thinking they're getting good liberal news and it's better than Fox in their opinion, where it's like, in my opinion, they're all just spewing the machine. So I think there's that. They just haven't woken up. They're still saying, and they're just only getting their information from traditional sources. So they're just flat out misinformed. And then some of them, and maybe it's a combination of both for some people, are worried about crossing the line because, look, the corporate media controls entertainment too. There's 5 multinational conglomerates that run every single, like 95% of all media outlets, which mean they own, Disney, Comcast. These people control everything. So, I'll be honest with you. Last summer, a year ago, I was hired to work I have a movie review podcast called Comedy Film Nerd. So I'm a filmmaker as well. So I have some knowledge on talking about movies, and a movie review like site and TV thing hired me. And we were getting ready. We were in pre-production, and then I got fired because they saw my Twitter feed. They said my Twitter feed was too political. And my Twitter feed at that time was calling out corporate Democrats in California who had voted down single-payer healthcare. They were trying to get single-payer healthcare just in California. And this guy, Anthony Rendon, a state representative, voted it down at the 11th hour. And so my Twitter feed was just calling him out. I wasn't swearing. I wasn't going after Trump or anyone like that. I was saying this is hypocritical. And I got fired from that. Fired.
Oh, amazing.
And so I think there is some fear that if you speak out too much, especially, I got fired from that. Imagine if I had a big, and it wasn't a lot of money, it was decent, but imagine if I had a big network sitcom paying me millions of dollars and it's on NBC or whatever that, makes weapons, so what do I, and then some executive comes and goes, hey man, you might want to dial that Assange talk down. I don't know if we're going to renew your next season of this show. It's little veiled threats like that. What they do, they come at you, they either threaten you or they buy you. Mm-hmm. They'll come and go, tell you what, we'll give you a whole new we'll give you a big fat contract. Just do us a favor. Don't talk so much about that. It's just ruffles people's feathers the wrong way. But talk more about this, or just be silly. Don't be so political, but the country's too divided. I hear that a lot. Country's so divided. Don't bring up politics. So that's what they would say. And this Assange business, look, and maybe they would even say, look, I agree with you, man. I don't like what they're doing to him either, but man, the country, we're getting too much pushback. So right. I think it's both.
And then the other tactic is, besides those sort of economic silencing weapons, they'll do a Randy Credico on you. Now, granted, it wasn't during his entertainment that they went after him, but he had all those interviews with Julian Assange, and they put out that subpoena for him. I feel in my heart Randy Credico would be on Unity 4J if he didn't have this subpoena and legal problems hanging over him. So they've got all kinds of weaponry to come at, especially voices who have large audiences such as yourself. And that can be scary too, to be in their crosshairs.
It is scary because look what they did to Julian. He reveals all these war crimes and suddenly he's accused of rape. So it's just like, whoa, that's a really severe thing to accuse somebody of. You know, I mean, they won't stop at anything. They'll just like, I mean, what else would they accuse you? Anybody, any of us? What are you, pedophile? Your thing? I mean, they'll just throw anything at you to just get, because they know how, you know, social media, they just put some stuff out there and someone reads, nobody sits and reads a whole story. No one will sit. I mean, how many people, I've heard some people, yeah, but Assange, that rape thing. And it's like, wait a minute, the two women, he said he would go to trial in Sweden as long as you don't extradite him. And they wouldn't agree to do that. And then they dropped like, I'm like, if he committed those crimes, he should stand trial. But he flat out said in an interview, I did not do this. I will gladly stand trial if they don't extradite. But people don't read that. They read the little clip that the corporate media puts out, and then boom, it's just in the ecosystem. Oh, he's done sexual assault. So then it's just like, that's how they do it. Or they, like you say, they subpoena and they just shut you up. They just put some smear tactic thing on you, and then enough of the population buys it because they just get their news from Facebook memes, you know, or some journalist on camera on CNN or MSNBC or Fox just says the way they tell the story. They'll do it. I've seen articles where the headline, the online headline, is very inflammatory and one-sided. And then they'll give other sides to the topic in the bottom of the article because they know most people are not going to read the whole thing. They're on their laptop and they just see this thing and, oh, wow, Medicare for all. This new survey says Bernie Sanders' thing is going to cost $2 trillion more dollars or something like that. It's just like, it's going to cost $32 trillion to have everyone have health care. Deep in the article, they say it was costing $34 trillion. So this new Medicare for all would actually save us $2 trillion. They don't do that. So that's their tactic on everything. And I can see why a lot of people go, look what they did to Julian Assange. He's been in solitary confinement. He's a political prisoner. They accuse him of all these things, and now they want to extradite him to the United States to put him in jail. Look what they did to Chelsea Manning. So right. I understand why some people are afraid to speak up.
It's amazing the spins they can do. And a lot of it is the sin of omission. And they are able to get people to believe things, because who has time? We're being bombarded with TMI, too much information, and then of course all the distractions and people struggling, and there's just a plethora of things that keep people from being truly informed. I'm wondering if you have experienced actual pushback directly from having done the Unity for J vigils. What is the feedback coming from your audiences about it?
Well, when I started doing my political vigilante YouTube show a little over a year and a half ago, January 2017 is when I started. It was interesting. I lost some followers because they were just diehard Democrats or whatever, and I was very critical of the Democratic Party. And then when I was critical of, you know, Trump and the Republican Party, I lost some people that were like vets or whatever that followed me when I'm critical of the gun legislation. But then I picked up all these progressives who were just like, the system's broken and we want. So I've actually gained a bigger and more active political following, more than just comedy fans. And my following has been extremely supportive of this, because this is the kind of stuff I talk about on my show, Political Vigilante, all the time. So they're like, yeah, more. I haven't gotten any direct blowback from doing these vigils from anyone that I know of. Now, it might just be, who knows what is happening. I might be on the short list of like, oh, these are the handful of comedians we're considering for this thing. And then they get to my name and someone goes, yeah, but he's a little all nuts with the Assange thing, so we should just pass. He's too political. That could, I mean, those conversations happen like that in show business. And that just might be those quick little, that's such a subtle form of censorship. It's not in writing anywhere. No one's saying Graham Elwood's banned, but they just go, well, I like Graham, but he's a little too political and he sounds a little nuts all with some of this stuff. So let's just go with this other comic safe where he won't ruffle feathers. It's that simple.
Right. The marginalization, it's like a whispering campaign of marginalizing people who speak out. There's sort of another, I don't know if you'd call them a weapon, but just another tool that has proliferated of late, I've read about, where comedians like Chris Rock refuses to do college campuses. And because of all the microaggressions, everything becomes that's politically incorrect. And that has become a form of indoctrination that has silenced people as well. Have you performed on college campuses, or are you part of the contingent of comedians who say, I'm not going to put up with this strange sort of silencing from progressive people, supposedly? What are your thoughts on that?
I have performed on college campuses. It's been a couple of years since I have. I haven't since the election or since I've started doing my YouTube channel. And that hasn't been I didn't like make a choice to say no. I just haven't really, I never did that many colleges. It was when I was on the road opening for Doug Benson, and he would get a lot of colleges. And so I would do them with him, but I just never really pursued the colleges that much. And lately the hypersensitivity and the overly getting offended is interesting to me, because I was watching, comedians in cars getting coffee, and Jerry Seinfeld was talking to, I think it was Louis Black, and they were talking about the censorship during the Red Scare in the 50s came from the right. And now there's some censorship coming from the left. You can't say this, you can't say that, you can't say this. And it's like, right. I've some audiences that are so liberal or whatever, sometimes they're not good because they're too uptight and you can't make fun of anything. So it's like, I don't want the best audiences, I'll be flat out, are the progressive ones. I just did the Jimmy Dore show. He did it live in Chicago in front of 600 people. It was sold out. And that was one of the most amazing comedy experiences I've ever had. I've done shows in front of 1,000 people. I've gotten standing ovations and stuff like that, but there was nothing like 600 progressives all together laughing at all these political jokes, making fun of both parties and both sides and the whole system. And because I think progressives feel sort of marginalized, we all feel like we're crazy, we're all alone, and then get us together in a room and everyone's like, yeah, me too. And everyone there's like, it is wrong what they're doing to Julian Assange, and the two-party system is messed up, and I don't trust the media. And that's why I'm going to keep doing my show, because those crowds, they're out there, they're hungry, and it's people that have been woken up for a while or have just woken up, and the response is overwhelming, and it gives me hope.
That's excellent. You just wonder what other platforms, what other forums can there be? It feels like that it's a total monopoly, and how to find your window. How do you feel about your various forums where you can present yourself, be it YouTube or your website? Do you see any other possibilities if they cut those out? Have you been investigating Patreon or Steemit? What is your backup plan for when they really start getting fascist and getting people like you off YouTube?
Well, I've started with multiple plans in place from day one. I've learned that, and having been very active in podcasting, you got to find a lot of, avenues or revenue streams or whatever you want to call it. And when they started a year ago, really throttling, when Google really started going after independent media, it was like, wow. So I started to put my videos are also on Daily Motion, which is a YouTube competitor out of France. And I just got approved for Steemit. I haven't put anything on Steemit yet. Steemit's, I don't quite understand it and the cryptocurrency and all that, but I'm going to start putting my content there. I also take the audio from all my videos and I release a podcast on iTunes. I have a Patreon page. Anyone wants to go to patreon.com/Graham Elwood, they can support it there. So, and then, you know, doing more live shows because the people really want to see it live. They want to see that live experience and feel it. So yeah, we've all been talking, all of us, me, Jimmy Dore, Ron Placone, we've all been talking about how they're coming after us and how this is censorship. And we're all like trying to, in my opinion, it's just have multiple platforms and multiple outlets. That way, if they shut one down or censor you or block you or whatever, you have these other ones in place.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And what about finding other ways to monetize, selling products, or are people looking into that more just to stay afloat? It's really hard if they start blocking avenues. So going into different kinds of production of products, perhaps. So what other alternatives besides just being able to have media approaches to stay afloat?
That's a great question. So one of the things, the reason I call my show The Political Vigilante is I'm a huge Batman fan. And so I tell everybody, you're all political vigilantes. You all go out there and get your own research. And I tell people to get involved in politics. And I said, we need a progressive groundswell, like get progressives on your school board, on your county, and so I always say that. And then I started ending the show saying, make Gotham great again. So that's like my catchphrase. And so I have started making shirts, make Gotham great again shirts, and people love them and they're buying them online at my website and after shows. And then also as a comedian, you know, I have 2 albums that are out that came out a couple years ago, and I'm going to be making a new album and I'm going to put that out. So it's sort of, I've learned that as a comedian, you know, any sort of artist now, you have to be a content creator. You have to always be putting out new content. And so this transition into becoming like a independent media, progressive comedian, I'm just using that same sort of business model of multiple revenue streams, multiple, have content in a bunch of different ways. Patreon, people can pay for premium bonus content that's not available anywhere else. And like, Patreon is great. Patreon is an amazing platform and it helps anybody who wants to do anything. And the thing I like about it is, as a performer, when I started, you were beholden to all these gatekeepers. You had to get, I mentioned Jerry Seinfeld. Well, Johnny Carson brought him on the show. Johnny Carson said, you're funny. And then, that helps your career. And then a network executive had to give him a TV show and all this other stuff. Now I can use Patreon. I, funded a feature film using Kickstarter. You can do all of these things and come up with all of these creative ways, and you can do your own thing. I run my own channel. I'm my own boss. I just bought a new studio. You can see some of the stuff right there. I'm putting in new stuff. So, it's a lot of work, but I think if you're inventive and then you see what all these other people are doing and how they're doing it and how they're engaging their followers. And, I let people, I'll do a Skype interview with them once a month and we can talk about whatever subject they want to interview. And I think giving people inclusion and ownership and building a community like this is a community. This is a community of people that see it's wrong that we're doing this to Julian Assange. And so there's a progressive community out there. There's an independent media community out there, and they want to support it. They want to help. They want to be a part of it. And if you're like I bought a WikiLeaks shirt to support Julian Assange. I was like, all right, because I'll wear that on stage and people will love it. So I think that's what we all have to be, sort of creative. And the technology is such that it allows us to have all of these these multiple, avenues.
Right. And what is so great about the age that we live in now, this virtual age, everything is heightened. And what we saw with Unity for J, how it just went from like maybe 500 people and whoosh, then all of a sudden it's 3,000 volunteers. What if we can get that to translate just before our eyes like that? Oh my gosh, look at what if that same kind of paradigm can shift in the public, and it can, because things can happen like that. It's amazing how people will all of a sudden, it'll reach a critical mass, 100th monkey kicks in, and then everybody gets it. And so it feels so lonely and so marginalized, being on the front end of an important action such as freeing Julian Assange. But just as Susie Dawson and her team herself witnessed just a massive transformation, we too can be that small group and then see it out there on much larger scale, such that you'll start getting bigger venues. Who knows? You're going to be on the Tonight Show next 6 months or something. That can happen.
Or like there's a new, like, I don't know, like the Young Turks starts doing a Tonight Show style show that's like a late night, progressive independent media show, and there's 5 million people watching it online or something like that. You know what I mean? Like that's the other thing too, is anything is possible. And when you tell me you went from 500 to 3,000, it shows me anything's from possible. I started talking into my iPhone, sitting at my breakfast table that's back where this TV is now, reading the paper. That's how I started doing the show a year and a half ago. And in a year and a half, I have almost 10,000 subscribers. And that's with Google throttling the numbers and unsubscribing people. Anything is possible. Have you ever seen people flood town hall meetings the way they did after the election? I mean, everyone started waking up going, I got to get more involved. So it can happen. I mean, the peace camp, the People's Peace Camp came, I'm not getting the words right, but that started back up. That's something Dr. King started, the Women's March. Would we, like, everyone's like, I got to get involved more. And so I think anything is possible. And it does give me hope that in a short time, this has gone from 500 to 3,000. Who's to say it can't go to 30,000 or 300,000 or 3 million?
Right. I think one thing that might help is, on the one hand, we definitely want to support Julian Assange, but that has a positive effect, but sometimes it can be difficult putting the whole concept of WikiLeaks onto the personage of one person, because then that person, whatever people feel for them. What I would like to see more of is the public becoming educated about what he has spawned. I was just looking on just Wikipedia, the list of leaks that came from WikiLeaks, and I've been following WikiLeaks since the beginning, and I just looked, and this is Wikipedia, who knows how they're even censoring that list, but it is just amazing. Everything from, I'm looking at it now, Guantanamo Bay procedures, Tibetan descent in China, Scientology, ClimateGate emails, Barclay Bank tax avoidance, Bilderberg Group, nuclear accident in Iran, Peru oil scandals. The list just goes on and on. None of this information would ever be in the public domain were it not for WikiLeaks. I don't think people realize that freedom of the press is really in WikiLeaks of what we've got. And maybe when people start realizing the American public is probably the most censored public in the world, really, even more than China, I would say. They just aren't aware. And I would like to see more of the accomplishments of Julian Assange as opposed to maybe focusing on the personage of Julian Assange, which is easy because then it just becomes a celebrity kind of thing. But the actual accomplishments are overwhelming.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that's a great point. And I always say this on my show is when people ask me, you know, viewers ask me or whatever, how do you convince people, and how do you, I live in a state where everyone's a hard right winger, they're all neoliberals or whatever. I go, the facts. That list you just read off, read that list to people and go, there, these are facts. All of these, WikiLeaks brought light to all of these things. And when people are like mad at Julian Assange, people give him information. He just put it out there. Whistleblowers needed a place because the regular press we can't trust. So I would just say, don't you see a value in this? Aren't you glad that we got the whistleblower and the Barclays and everything you just listed? And the list keeps going. We could be doing that we could talk for 20 minutes just on the list of things that WikiLeaks has dumped, right?
Yes, exactly.
I would show people that.
I just came up with an interesting idea, and then we're going to have to start closing out. But I like that idea of WikiLeaks. And what if it was the same branding, WikiLeaks, but each T-shirt was different? Each one had a WikiLeak. So it's WikiLeaks, the spy files, WikiLeaks, Vault 8. And so you see all these WikiLeaks T-shirts, but they each have a different actual leak. And people begin to see, oh, there's like 30 different kinds of WikiLeaks T-shirts. So you might want to put that in your product mix, something to think about.
That's a great idea. That's a great, well, WikiLeaks should do that to raise more money, I think.
Yeah. We are at the hour. Graham, it's been just a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for doing so much wonderful work, and keep up the great work. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. So same to you and everything you guys are doing over there. I really appreciate it. I'm honored and humbled to be asked to do this.